DBS community, welcome back with another video, and today we start our discussion over kind of the road to Nats. I do this generally every set, and I've done this for the past two nationals as well, with just going over kind of a what I call the state of the meta. So we go over each color, breaking down kind of where the color sits, just some of my opinions on the color, and trying to give some generic advice for anyone going into the event who's playing blue and just needing, some assistance or looking at a second opinion, regardless of if you agree with me or not. This video we are going to be going over blue, and the idea of this is that there are some decks that I will go over in the video. I will between colors I will make kind of a deck breakdown of particular decks, especially ones that I feel very highly on. That might not be getting a lot of representation or might not see a lot of representation, and it might open your eyes to if you're struggling with what you're looking to pick. You want to play blue, but you're not really sure what leader you want to play, so this is maybe a good discussion video for you to help that mental block that you might have. As always, if you guys enjoy the content, make sure you guys like and subscribe. I know I will be getting into the Fusion World stuff. I'm actually going to wait until they start officially revealing trailers and stuff for the set and the starter decks, and then we'll start breaking down that stuff. I'm not going to do the videos where we just go over each color individually, or each 2 or 3 cards. I don't need to do that anymore. And I don't think a lot of people like enjoying watching a 10-minute video talking about 2 cards, right? So and also if you want another opinion on just basic Nationals advice for Dragon Ball Super, go check out the Lookout. Damien and his team, they all do a very good job, and they've been doing a very good job, and I'm very happy that they've been putting out the road to Nationals. All information can be consumed and can be good and helpful, so watch these videos, watch the Lookout videos, watch other content creators who are putting out content. It's all made there to to assist you guys and to just help the community in its entirety. So enough of me talking about nonsense. Let's actually go into the video, and we're gonna go over the state of blue. Currently, I don't believe it is the strongest color going into nationals, but it is very sneaky. You will probably see a few different blue decks in Top Cut, whatever that Top Cut breakdown is going to be, whether it's 16 or 32 or however they're doing it this year. On a scale of 1 to 5, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. I think it's probably the 3rd strongest color currently going into next format. And there's a lot, obviously the 2 decks here on the screen, but there are a lot of just generic good blue strategies. And we saw this a lot last year with Crimson, right? Crimson was a deck where, as we were entering into Nationals, we were in a very heavy red format. We seem to be going down that path again. So what this actually entails is that we might see sort of a run back of some sort of blue deck that can sort of counter the red aggro that we're going to see. I will say the difference is we do not have, or blue does not have access to something like Dirty Burst, which was a huge benefit and a huge utility tool that blue no longer has access to. So let's go over the first deck I want to talk about, which is going to be Son Gokun Vegeta Tag Team in Hell, or aka Gogeta Aegis as it is called. Access to 2 of the most powerful, probably the most powerful defensive color combination in the game, which is going to be yellow and blue. Having access to resting cards as well as having energy restoration is a very, very annoying thing to deal with. And then also having the Aegis tool, which does both of those in itself, right? Probably the top blue control deck from the previous formats. I would say this probably outs Android 21. In a lot of ways, it's probably why we didn't see a lot of Android 21 success in other regions in the world. We talked about that on the Lookout tier list, how 21 is sort of a NA deck that's mainly played in North America. Most other, and I guess you can include Canada as well, just kind of in that NA sphere. But in other regions in the world, in the EU, in Australia, we didn't really see a ton of 21. It's probably either because, as we talked about, people don't think the deck is good, or they can just steamroll it with other decks. So, however, this deck did get its first. I think it has maybe 1 or 2 event wins. It's a very solid blue deck, having tons of utility, being able to self-awaken itself. Early, though, the deck does struggle. It's very unproductive. If it's able to get to the combo step, you're able to build some early Z energy, so then you're able to put down your Soul Punisher Z extra, then you can use the extra Z energy you're going to get for the next turn to start fueling into your Z leader. Once you're Z awoken and you have your Z extra card on board, the deck is basically at full strength. And this deck really focuses heavily on the late game. It's definitely, as most blue decks you're going to see on this list, or a lot of them are late game decks. You're going to see very interesting builds of this deck because of all the yellow utility you have. This deck's going to be even more defensive, and you're probably going to see some interesting tools that we haven't actually, been privy to. I'm sure there's some people that are hiding some sort of spicy tech for this deck that we will definitely see at Nats, and definitely probably going to see in Top Cut at some point. Now, there are a lot. This goes to the second blue control deck, or blue control decks, and you have a lot of different Android 21 decks to pick from. I think it's very strange that we have 3 decks with the same leader that's not a Goku that all can technically be relevant. Nature of Evil, this is the NA 21 that you see more, mostly everywhere. You have Self Control 21, which was used as a self-looping hand destruction deck. It's definitely seen a lot less play. I think generally there's been only maybe 1 to 2 people who have really seen success with the deck. Jared Lopez being one. Ali from EU or Big O Nation, I believe he did win an event with this deck as well. There might have been another one in there, I just can't remember off the top of my head. But the deck, both of these decks I feel like have slowly gotten a slightly worse because of the red format we're going to be entering. However, the last one I do feel like actually got a little better, and probably is a better pick than these two, just in my opinion, which is going to be the Malevolence Unbound. This is from set 8. The first set that we actually got introduced to green and blue as a color combination. So this utilizes a very powerful field spell called Android 21 Scheme, which is essentially a summoning sickness token where you get tokens, you give your opponent Android tokens, but the first battle card that you or your opponent play on each turn cannot attack that turn. So this is going to actually slow down a lot of aggro decks. You think a deck like Pan, the first battle card they play, Pan wants to make sure that it gets a 5k buff. Now it's a 20k or if not more, and they want to swing with that card. Well, now you can't. So you're losing that effect, and you're having to play around this field spell. This deck has tons of synergy with all types of Android cards and non-Android cards that are blue and green, or a combination of them as individual monocolors, so blue cards or green cards. This deck, I'm guaranteed you're going to see probably very little to no of this deck at any nationals around the world, but that is a good thing if you find the time to pick up the deck and learn it, because no one's going to be expecting to play against this deck. And I think, truthfully, this deck probably has a higher floor than the set 20 Android 21, and does more late game than Self Control 21. Self Control 21 is combo step, hand loop, right? This deck, you have a lot of control pieces you can use, both blue and green, and combination of both. It's a very, very, very good deck. I think this deck, we did see it last year at NA Finals, and I think the year before from the same guy. So the deck's still playable, so we might see it on this again. You might see people just pivot to the other 21 decks. But this is, I think, is a contender for a very, very special dark horse going into the Nats format next month. Another deck that I feel like has gotten very little shine, which is the Super Saiyan 2 Trunks starter deck. Having the combination of Earthling and Saiyan, I talk about this a lot, it's very powerful. It's probably the most powerful blue trait to have, both being an Earthling and a Saiyan leader, because you have access to literally almost every single support card that blue has to offer that's generic, right? This is the closest thing to Crimson that we would have in the game, being able to restand an energy. It is at the end of the turn, but you still can restand the energy. This deck does not take crit, so if you take a hit from something, from any sort of damage, it's placed in the drop area, you can just reveal it and add it to your hand instead. So another very just cool effect that you can use to, especially if you're playing against like decks like Megabora, Green Gohan, most red decks having some sort of crit early on in the game, you can kind of add those cards to your hand so you're not really losing out. You do have a secondary awake condition, which is either you or your opponent are at 4 life, or you have 3 Z energy, so you actually have 3 ways of awakening, which is not many decks in the game I think even have. I mean, a lot of decks now have 2, but most decks, you know, early decks only have 1s, right? So this deck having 3 potential ways of awakening is incredibly good. It's probably not the sexiest pick to play, to be honest with you. Most people will probably pivot to one of the other decks that I've already shown off, probably either being 21 or Gogeta. But this deck is a very good mid-range deck. Later in the game, this deck does fall off. It doesn't really do anything special. You play a lot of battle cards for between 1 and 3 energy, and that's really all you do. You might have access to things like Turning the Tide later, but you're not really playing out gigantic battle cards. You're playing out small stuff. You're playing out like Rose Goku Black, Piccolo, the both Oop cards. So you're playing a lot of like just mid-range kind of tempo stuff. But I think the deck just has tons of utility. Also, I didn't even mention the second effect on the deck, where you can draw the card, bottom deck an opponent's battle card, and then you can give a Z battle card that costs 5 or more 10k in double strike. So you actually can give your 5 cost double strike, which is weird because I believe he has triple strike, so I don't know why you would do that. Anyway, so I think this is an interesting deck you can look into playing. Depending on how the meta goes, if we see a lot of red, this could be a good pivot tool. Very similar to how Crimson was last year when we had the Gogeta and Sin meta going into Nationals. Another blue deck, and I hate talking about this blue deck with a passion, but Soul Striker is definitely a contender for being a top priority blue deck. It is the OG go-to leader. Thankfully this card did get errated a long time ago, or else people would probably have never stopped playing this deck. It literally just plays everything blue, right? You're playing big boss monsters, you're able to restand 2 energy per turn. It's an incredible deck. The deck is incredibly difficult to kill, tons of defense, and being able to play something really big and then get 2 energy back for your defensive, it basically means you don't really lose anything on your defensive tool. The problem with this deck now is that you do struggle to awaken until you're at 4, or you have to go into like going into surmountings or other cards that take your own life, which is fine. But when we're in a red meta, you're probably not gonna have to do that as much. But you do want to get some sort of energy established. So if you're not getting throttled down on turn 2 and you're at awakening with 2 energy, you're not really gaining value off of that particular line of play. So this deck is definitely going to be built for more mid-range to late game. I would say far more on the late game side. Deck doesn't do much early game as well as most blue decks don't. So once you get into the mid game, the deck will start ramping up, and then when you get into the late, that's when you're going to be dropping these big boss monsters, and then hopefully being able to end the game before you go into time, because this deck is, I would say, is probably just as like notorious for something like Hatch or 21 for going into time, just because of how difficult this deck is to kill. And because this deck lacks like a true finisher, other than like Secret Rare, it's hard to kind of finish with this deck. Now the last deck I want to go over is my pick for being the meta breaking deck for blue. There's going to be one of these in each video, and again, this is just purely based off of opinion here. So 7 Coup, we call it Tyler Coup at our locals. Shout out to Tyler, who plays this deck all the time. We both played it last year at Nats. I felt like this deck was actually a very good pick last year for Nats as well, especially the way that we built the deck. Problem was I ran into more Sin than Gogeta. If I would have ran into more Gogeta, probably would have been fine. But nevertheless, this deck is, I would say, it's probably the best blue control deck in the game. I think this deck rivals Gogeta. Also, this deck actually has more than one finisher. So like Gogeta really only has the leader effect as your big way of ending games. You have these giant 8-drops that swing and do stuff, but as you get later into the game, certain colors can kind of deal with that stuff, right? This leader has a built-in double strike crit on the leader, which is fantastic. Having a blue deck that has the ability of like critting your opponent down and also being a huge number without having to combo is a very, very powerful tool. Tons of late game boss monsters. It's gotten probably 2 or 3 over this last year that were different from last year's Nats. So that's gonna be something to look into. And we got a new promo, the Vegeta promo, which is huge support for this deck. Now this deck does struggle again with early game pressure and aggro. So if you go up against something like Pan, if you're not prepared to deal with Pan, you're never going to get to the point where you actually can be online and become that late game threat. Also, this deck should win every Android 21 matchup. So because we are in NA, you're probably going to see a lot of Android 21, I feel like, unless people just are scared off of it because of the aggro. If you go against 21, this deck should throttle Android 21 every single time. I promise you that is a guarantee. I would put money up against that. This deck throttles Android 21. Actually, this deck throttles all 3 Android 21s. So that is just something to keep in mind. I definitely think this deck could be a sleeper pick. Again, it's kind of like the other 21 deck. I don't see a lot of people probably migrating to this leader, but if you do, it is a very strong pick. I would advise learning the deck, learning and understanding how this deck actually operates. So for some cards, we have for the set that I do feel like are not for the set, before going into Nats that should be played in most blue decks, whether in the side or in the main deck. We have Super Saiyan 2 Trunks, the Pilaf Shu and Mai, and Rose Goku Black. So Rose Goku Black was really used a lot last year, and this card is going to come back again and be very powerful. It's a very good tool for blue to use to be able to clear cards in this combo step that red is trying to aggro you down with. Once you have 3 Z energy, you can play it for 1, bottom deck of 4 or less, and draw a card. And then you can just keep boarding one of these every turn, right? Being able to remove red cards on the board when they've comboed with them, or when they've comboed cards, you can just tap 1 just to remove it and draw a card. It's very difficult for red to come back from that. And doing that too much, red will lose steam and blue will just sort of outpace them later on in the game, as long as they're able to get to that point. Super Saiyan 2 Trunks, we have enough 30k boss monsters or 8-drop battle cards now to where this card can actually be utilized. Being able to basically remove any battle card on board, ignoring barrier, is very good. You play it for 1. You also can play it from your life if you do hit it off of your life in like the Trunks leader. Actually, I think you can do this in any leader. It's a 20k crit as well, which crit in blue is a very powerful tool because there's not a lot of really strong crit blue cards. Most of the time it's double strike and triple strike. And then we have Pilaf Shu and Mai. This is I didn't include the Android 17 negate because that's sort of like a everyone knows that you kind of it's like D-Magic Sense would be an Android 17 negate. That's basically what most blue decks use for defense. Some blue decks play this card, some don't. I think this card should be utilized a lot in the Nats format because of the activate battle on defense to be able to bottom deck cards from your opponent's combo area. Why this is good is if you play against things like Gohan, Cumber, Pan, you just think of all of the different decks that need a Z energy in order to get their deck operational. Having this card down on turn 1, if you go first, your opponent swings and they have to combo a card, you just bottom deck it. Now they're losing combo power. Now they're losing the effect of being able to play on curve, and they have to extend more on the next turn. Also, being able to just remove any keyword skill on a card is very powerful. So if you play this card and obviously like you can't hit like the Victory Strike, the new Victory Strike card, but like if they have triple strike or something, you can play this card, draw a card, pop triple strike, and you basically just blank that card for the battle. And you also can get rid of a combo card in their hand as well too. So all 3 of these cards should be played in some sort of ratio in your decks. If you don't have them, I would pick them up before Nationals and start practicing with these cards. And then 2 cards that I wanted to mention very quickly. One, it's probably in everybody's Z deck, which is the Black Kamehameha Mighty Blast. This is your Z extra card that came out in the anniversary box. Every color got one. Every color should be playing them. This one's very good, being able, the second effect, drawing a card and playing a token that is a blocker, is very good. So it's basically like Ultra Instinct type of card where you're able to get 15k. You're going to draw a card and play a blocker, which means you're getting out of 2 attacks. You also can use the first effect, which is almost like the Beerus Destroys. So you're kind of having to go away from running those cards, which is very nice for blue because now that opens up extra slots for other battle cards and other tech pieces. So you're definitely going to want to run at least 2 of these probably in most blue decks. Now for Baby Hatch. The reason why I bring up Baby Hatch, obviously we have Gogeta Secret Rare, we have Beast Gohan, we have Kaioken. These are all very, very good Secret Rares. However, with all the aggro going around, blue, and let's say like your opponent Koitsakaiju or Broly Crown, where they rip a super combo out of your hand, so now you can't combo out, or they rip a negate out of your hand, they counterplay your negate, you're going to start losing value, right? Especially early on. And you need 3 energy for this card to be active. Now, having decks that can ramp makes this a little bit easier, but being able to just shut down a turn, or if your opponent overextends and you can shut down their turn, it's going to give you a really big change of like the position of power in your matchup. I think if you're playing a blue deck, like other than maybe Gogeta, because I think Gogeta probably needs the Aegis. That might even not be true because Mechikabura just sort of removes that card, so it's not as relevant. And with red coming around, it might not be as relevant. But being able to just shut your entire opponent's turn down with Baby Hatch is probably still one of the most powerful things in the game, and it has not been utilized at all this year. So I think this would be a very sneaky secret rare choice for decks. A lot of blue decks that I mentioned, outside of like maybe Soul Striker and Gogeta, have multiple ways of ending games, whether it's burn damage, whether it's bigger battle cards, turning the tide, etc., etc., or just going in the time, right? But being able to shut down your opponent's turn, it's going to be a very powerful tool. So I definitely would suggest trying it out, seeing if it is a secret rare for you. And it's probably like a $20 secret rare, realistically. So instead of having to spend up for like Beast Gohan or Kaioken, just build your deck with more boss monsters, like more just strong finishers, and then use Baby Hatch as your skip a turn effect, essentially. So, but that is the video here today, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy this discussion over the state of blue. Leave comments down below and we can discuss what's going on with blue if you guys have any interest in discussing the stuff, obviously. Thank you guys, of course, for watching. I will be doing a few deck profiles overviews from this particular video, and if you guys wanted to see a particular one that we talked about, please let me know down in the comments. I will take it into consideration, and I might just do a video based on your opinion there. So thank you guys for watching as always, and I will see you guys.